You are listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast brought to you by Birmingham Live. Hello, welcome back to the Claret and Blue podcast. My name is Dan Rowlandson and I'm joined today by John Townley for another podcast episode. And this one is something slightly different from things we normally do, where we've talked about it in previous episodes. It's very much pre-match, post-match, pre-match, post-match. Let's talk about something different, something topical. Now, Manchester United were humiliated at the weekend by their fierce rivals Liverpool 7-0, which, I mean, seeing them lose in that manner is excellent. Seeing Bruno Fernandes in tears and throwing his dummy out, excellent times too. So that sparked an idea of the 7 times that Aston Villa smashed their opponents. Stay with me. So, John, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, thanks, mate. Again, after a win, it's always a better week, isn't it? So, yeah. We haven't done one of these podcasts or something similar to this, sort of a timeless but also topical, but something that the viewers can come back to for different reasons. We haven't really done one of these, or we haven't done many of them, and we want to do more. So, yeah, hopefully it's an enjoyable podcast. Yeah,
we're going to take a trip down memory lane. Now, I must say, John, how old are you? 21, 22?
23 now.
I'm 27, so this list is probably going to be heavily dominated by the Premier League era and probably, I know the 7 games we're going to be talking about from 2008 onwards, pretty much. This will be. We'll do an honourable mentions kind of round at the end as well, because I've put this out on Twitter yesterday and got people to send their suggestions in as well. And there's loads of people saying things like, the 6-0 against Liverpool in 1963. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure that was great, but I've got no recollection, never heard of it. So we're going to keep it to yours and my list, John, the 7 times Aston Villa have battered their opposition, smashed their opposition, whatever we've titled this video. So we'll get underway with number 7. So we're going to do these in some kind of order of worst to best. That sounds stupid to say this is like the worst best result. So number 7 is Derby County 0, Aston Villa 6. And like I said, it sounds stupid to say that's the worst, but we're going to get better to the following 6 after this. John, your recollections of that? 2008 this was. Now we'll get into the iconic goal in a second, but your just kind of overall memories of this game.
I literally don't have a memory of it. I was 8. So I don't know. The only memory, I suppose, is watching, or at least I know of Petrov's goal. I've obviously seen the other goals doing highlights and like Premier League years, that sort of stuff. But the Petrov goal was obviously just iconic in general in like Premier League era for Villa. But yeah, the 6-0 I don't actually remember of, if we're going to break the game down by minute, I won't have a clue. I've done some research and we were 3-0 up at half time, apparently. Derby were already relegated as well at the point. I do remember that. They had literally the worst Premier League season.
Still is, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, still is. I think it was like 11 points. Just that game was Petrov's goal. That's the one that kind of stands out for me. There was 6 different scorers as well, which is probably unusual for at least 6-0, but also for a team like, the team that we had. Obviously, we had a lot of players who could score goals, but you would expect, Ashley Young to get a couple, or Gabby or Carew. But it was Gabby, Harewood, Carew, Petrov, Young and Gareth Barry scored the goals. And we beat Bolton 4-0 the week before. And then a game that we might touch on soon will be the 5-1 against Blues, maybe. That was also after that. So we scored how many goals would that be? 10, 15 goals in 3 games.
The site I'm looking at has got league positions at the time. I don't know whether this is before the fixture or after, but it's got Villa in 7th, Derby obviously 20th. I was going to read out the team lineups, so with starting 11s for each of these games we're talking about as well. The little handy stat I had that it was 6 different goal scorers, and you've already mentioned it. So that's 6 of the 11 that you've read out. So in full, you've got Carson, Melberg, Zach Knight, Martin Larsson, Wilfred Boomer, Gareth Barry, Steven Petrov, Nigel Reo-Coker, Ashley Young, which seems bizarre to be talking about Ashley Young in 2008 and in 2023, Gabby Bonlahor and John Carew, which is a nice side, and maybe we should have achieved more with that side, but that's a story for another day. Yeah, like you said, Petrov, the most iconic goal there. When I was doing the research, this was a quote from Martin O'Neill saying something like, he's been a bit down on his luck at the moment, a bit lacking confidence. So for him to take that effort on and score from there will kind of give him a boost. It's like, it'll give him a boost to score from 50 yards. What do you expect? Should we move on to number 6 in the list?
Yep.
I'll let you mention you cannot reveal this one because I wasn't fully convinced of this one, to be honest, but it's a list that we've compromised on.
Yeah, and again, I think we need to stress that the list is kind of like mine and yours, as in we need to fill out a couple of minutes to talk about it. And if it was, with like Wimbledon, that was like massive. But at the same time, I couldn't comment on it. So, I mean, I put forward the 5-1 against Norwich away, and that doesn't sound like particularly like Norwich away. All right, calm down. If you want to go, in literal terms, it was technically a win that kept us up, although it was like the 4th or 5th game of the season. we stayed up was it a point that we stayed up in 1920, I think. I was watching that in my uni room, as I did for most of the last 3 or 4 years. Wesley double won it, and then he had the chance to score his hat-trick before that time, and then he just got saved by the keeper. I think we all probably knew it was going to get saved at the time. Like, when a Villa going to go 3-0 up sort of thing, or I mean, it must have been 2-0 at half time. Then thinking about it, I think, Villa are going to go 3-0 up away at home in the 5th game back in the Premier League. Even though it was Norwich, that was still a team who won the Championship when we were in there by a bit of a canter, and they beat us as well, obviously, on the final day of that season. And they lifted the trophy at Villa Park and all sorts. But yeah, I remember I tweeted actually after that game when we won 5-1. I probably got carried away and I said something like, I don't know why, I delved into some stats and I found that however amount of goals we had scored at that point in the season, it must have been 15 or something. No team had got relegated in Premier League history. 15 goals. I love about it now because technically I was right, but I went so early. We were down, weren't we? We were 4 games to go, and there I am saying, "Oh, we scored 15 goals in 4 games." It sounds like why are we? What's the world for?
I tell you what, between us recording this and getting it out, try and find that tweet and I'll flash it up on screen if you can find it. If I found it, it'll be here now. Just funny to look back on. There's a little stat underneath the site that I'm looking at. It's at 11v11.com is where I'm taking all these team sheets from and things. It says this was the first time Aston Villa had scored 5 or more goals in an away game since 6-0 win against Derby County. So quite convenient that we've talked about both of those already. The team news in full. Tom Heaton, Frederick Gilbert, Bjorn Engels, Tara Mings, Matty Target, Marvellous Nakamba, Conor Harahan, John McGinn, Anwar El Ghazi, Jack Grealish, and Wesley. Now, there's 2 players there that are still at Aston Villa from that start 11 in Mings and McGinn that are still starting. Now, obviously, Nakamba is still contracted to us, but on loan at Luton. Gilbert went permanently, I think, didn't he, this summer? So, yeah, a lot's changed in those 3 years, but that game actually, I just got the job here in the September, and obviously that was the start of October. And one of my first jobs, going out and about filming, was to go to Nottingham Forest. I think they were playing Derby. It's obviously a Derby game, and they wanted to get some footage of the fans in the stadium and things like that. So it was one of the first Villa games that I'd missed. Obviously it was away, and I don't go to away games very often, if at all, these days. But it was one of the first games I didn't see any of it on my phone, didn't see any of the results or anything. And I remember tweeting, I think, again, if I can find it, I'll flash it up. First game I've missed, we've scored 5 goals. I won't come next week and we'll hopefully win again, or some stupid line like that. But Wesley is the talking point, isn't it? A player that we spent a lot of money on. Scored a couple of goals there against a side that ultimately would go on to be relegated. Did you think at that point, or at any point then, that Wesley would go on to be a success?
It was a real handful in that game, obviously, because he scored twice, but it was just a good presence. Yeah. And in the games previously, it was between him and Joel Linton, and it was a big comparison about who's going to score more goals. Yeah, I think it was more so actually in the Burnley game later on. I thought, he's coming into his own now. He was really good in that Burnley game. That's just really sad, isn't it? I actually think he was getting to a level that I thought was a very decent Premier League player, to be honest. And he was getting a Brazil call-up as well the week before the Burnley injury too. So it was all kind of going for him. And so I think he was adapting slowly but surely. And then obviously that injury is completely, it's a real shame. He's obviously at Levante now, and he's scored a couple of goals, but ultimately he isn't the same player. And clearly that injury has had a big impact on his career. But that win stands out to me just, I suppose, because in my 10-year memory of supporting Villa, there's probably not too much to go off, but that stood out for me as a happy time, I suppose.
It's a butterfly effect, isn't it? That the Wesley situation, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but the one that you see that does the rounds all the time is Bernd Leno getting injured for Arsenal and Lionel Messi winning the World Cup, because then Martinez comes in, plays well, moves to Villa, he wins the Copa America, Messi wins the World Cup, etc. This kind of chain of events. Wesley kind of getting better, scoring goals there, gets that Burnley game, Brazil call-ups on the horizon, all of a sudden gets a bad injury. If that injury doesn't happen, maybe he goes to Brazil and scores there on international duty, comes back full of confidence, scores a few more goals for Villa. Villa fly up the table rather than survive on the final day, and Wesley becomes this great Premier League player for Villa that scores loads and loads of goals. And I can't even say that with a straight face, because I don't think Wesley would have made it anyway. But you just think, if that injury never happened, what might have been for a record signing, I think it was at the time.
Could have not worked out at Villa, but then he could have got a move to Nottingham Forest or whoever it may be, and he's a Premier League player still, and he's in Europe, or he might be playing Europa League or whatever it is. But now it's obviously had a massive effect on him. But I suppose the one thing that we know probably wouldn't have happened is that we wouldn't have signed Ali Samatta. So, yeah.
Christ, Ali Samatta. Oh, God. This is why I like doing these random podcasts about different things. You just throw up these players' names that you've just forgotten about. Like Ali Samatta, this is 3 years ago we're talking about. When we look through some of the names from the older team sheets, you just think, Christ, no wonder we're almost getting relegated every single season. Move on to number 3, though. Arsenal against Aston Villa, 3-0 win for Villa at the Emirates. Now, again, we're talking about times Villa have blown the opposition away and things like that. 3-0 isn't necessarily the definition some people might have of that. It was one of those games where you just felt like, it was near the start of that season, wasn't it, when we'd started really well. Obviously, we'd beaten Liverpool at the start of that season as well, which we might get onto at some point during this episode, I would have thought. But to go to the Emirates and play a side that, yes, they're not the Arsenal that they are as of today. Mikel Arteta was new to the club at the time. But to go there and play in the manner we did, Ollie Watkins getting his brace, I love the celebration pictures from that as well. And slight dampening on a couple of these. They're locked down, so there's no fans in the background, but Watkins kind of like just two fingers up for his braces. I love those photos. This kind of free-flowing brand of football, exciting, scoring loads of goals. It felt good, and it was like, this is the season we might go on and do something. And obviously ultimately we didn't do anything that we hoped in terms of winning trophies or getting into Europe, but a standout moment from a bad time of lockdown and things, to go to the Emirates and play like that, it's got it into this list.
And it could have been a battering as well. I remember they could have been like 5-0. I remember they cleared one off they cleared one off the line, and then John McGinn had that goal ruled out for offside or something in the first. That was
early on, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was to make it 1-0, but obviously got chalked off. But I never understand how that can be offside. There was a play like in Leno's view, but McGinn belted the ball in the top corner. Like, no one saving that. And that was just like why Villa fans were so annoyed the other week when Arsenal had 2 players in front of Martinez when Jorginho, when it hit the bar and winning. It's exactly the same thing. The keeper's never going to save it, or whatever happened afterwards wasn't going to change. They weren't really interfering. But, consistency, I guess it was 2 years ago, so you can't really bring it up too much. This game, if I remember rightly, came straight after we lost. Obviously, we started well that season. I think we won 4 out of 4 or 3 out of 3. 4 out of 4, wasn't it? But then we lost to Leeds 3-0 at home, which weren't great. And then we lost 4-2 at home to Southampton. But then we obviously beat Arsenal 3-0. So it was almost at a point in the season where it's like, all right, we won four of our first 4 games and scored a lot of goals. But now we've conceded. So we lost 4-3 to Southampton, and then we conceded 8 goals or so, 7 goals in 2 games. So yeah, it was almost a win of almost a bit of relief as well that we weren't just going to start well and then just go backwards. The goals as well that we scored, that run from Grealish for the 3rd goal that took it from his own half. It's like prime Grealish. That I think it was our first goal. Barkley and Grealish were just keeping the ball for
They played between each other, didn't they? And then put it through to McGinn, I think. I'll just read you the team news while I've mentioned it. Obviously, Martinez in goal, Cash, Konsa, Mings, Target, Douglas Luiz, John McGinn, Ross Barkley, Trezeguet, Grealish, Watkins. So obviously a pretty much similar team to what we're seeing today. But yeah, just different level. Some of the football at the time in the early part of that season. Some good games across that season actually that probably could have made this list. But Arsenal with Liverpool was kind of a Kickstarter for why they would get into this list that we're doing.
That lockdown season, because that was a full lockdown season apart from maybe 2 games, partially open to fans. But there's just bizarre things happening in that, and that was definitely due to fans. And on that Arsenal one as well, we obviously have a good record at the Emirates. But the season that we came up when we lost 3-2, I remember every single one of their goals that they scored, there was a reason why it should have been disallowed. So it was sweet to kind of go back the year after and really do a job on them. And then obviously we beat them later that season as well, 1-0. Yeah, we've had a good sort of run against Arsenal, and that should have continued a couple of weeks ago.
So the 4th time that Aston Villa tore their opponents to shreds or whatever I've titled this. I could have done 7 different versions, couldn't I, have the title at this point. Aston Villa 6, Sunderland 1 at Villa Park on the 29th of April 2013. Christian Benteke hat-trick is the reason this is in here. I think peak Benteke, just absolutely bullying defenders, scoring good goals. But also, almost a little bit of a side note, Ron Vlaar getting the scoring opening on the 31st minute. I haven't actually had a chance to watch back all the goals here that we're talking about, but it feels like it was from a million miles out. 30 yards, 25 yards or something, just absolutely blasted it. It probably much closer than that, but low across the floor, started the game off with the scoring. And like I said, Benteke goes on to get his hat-trick late on in the game. But that was like a real, not a relegation 6-pointer, but we were both down the bottom, weren't we? And it's towards the end of the season. So you kind of look at that game. You look at that game to go, Villa need to do something here. We need to get 3 points if possible. But to get them in that style and blow somebody apart, blow somebody away in that manner, that was a real kind of sign of, okay, we're probably, hopefully, going to be okay this season.
Yeah, I think it was a Monday night game, if I'm correct, because it was
definitely a night game. I don't know whether it was Monday or not.
Yeah, Vla with that sort of rocket. I think it took a couple of like bobbles off the ground, but obviously hit it well, and it was kind of like through a crowd of players. So I think that was probably the main reason why it kind of skipped past the keeper. I think Sunderland, they drew back like literally a minute later, so it wasn't as if we kind of coasted into like a 5-0 lead and then gave one away. They scored straight away after we scored the opener, and then Andy Vyman scored before half-time to make it 2-1. Benteke comes up with like I think it's 18-minute hat-trick, and yeah, by then with obviously the game's done, Gabby seals it, and I think they had a red card too before Benteke's third goal when we were 4-1 up. When did we beat teams convincingly and comfortably at home or away, especially like under Lambert? Not that it was Lambert's fault, it was just obviously there was a bad time for us as a club in terms of league positions and so the quality of play that we had. But yeah, to have someone like Benteke, you can always score plenty of goals, but that was the sort of one occasion that we actually did it.
I managed to have a quick flick through the goal. I was listening, by the way. I added another tab. The beauty of doing things online, I had another tab open of the goals. And the VAR one takes a deflection on the way through, not a bobble on the ground. It is far out. I'm rubbish with yards, but it's well outside the box. And the Benteke one's me saying at the start, they're not Benteke getting good goals. They weren't particularly good goals. One is the keeper kind of makes a save and powers it out into his path, but he gets a good header to get it down and in the goal. He scores a header from a corner as well, which is a good goal, a good kind of strong neck muscles, peak Benteke that. And then the third one to seal the hat-trick, I think it was on his left foot from a tight angle. Just a menace. Absolutely love Benteke, one of my, favourite players growing up. I was in my teenage years in 2013, but still early days of supporting Aston Villa, really, and unbelievable. Let's go to the fifth time on the list that Aston Villa ripped their opponents to shreds. I don't know if I've done that one already, but let's go for that. Aston Villa 4, Wolverhampton Wanderers 1. Now, again, this is one that you thought of and you said, can we include championship games or not? And I said, yeah, why not? Let's just do whatever we want. Yeah. Why did you want to put this one in the list?
Because I can't remember what happened before 28. I think, again, like we've obviously battered a few teams, and like we beat Bristol City like 5-0, and that was like cool. It was nice. But the Wolves one had more talking points. So no, it was one of those where I think that, again, in my recent memory, that was, if you could choose, I don't know, 10 Villa games that you could go back to and just relive for like 90 minutes, that would be one of them, because it was that season was obviously good, but at the same time, it was like every game you expected to win. We were in the playoffs, but we were never really challenging for top 2 until we obviously beat Wolves. And the game itself was obviously,
Were we close enough at that stage to think we might get top 2? Or am I misremembering?
No, but once we beat Wolves, I remember there was a game against Fulham. We had, I think it was towards the end of the season, and we lost that game. But if we had won, we'd have gone like a couple of points away. But we were never. It was never really a possibility, really. But yeah, the Wolves one was big. I think Adoma scored straight away. Then Jota, like literally Jota and Neves was playing for Wolves. They were by far and away the best team in the division. But that's why it was so good, because that was one game in that year that we weren't expected to win, really. Like obviously it was right, we can win, but so every game before that was like an expectancy. If we don't win, that's not a good enough result. But if we didn't beat Wolves, it wasn't like they were just a very, very good team. I remember they had that play next to Neves and Jai, I think his name was. He kept trying to kick Grealish the whole game, and like the crowd were loving it. Bjarnason's goal as well. He come on and slammed it into the post, and it went in. And yeah, it was a really good game. But then classic Villa, like literally Sunday, Monday. 3 days later, we had QPR at home, and then we go and lose to QPR at home. Like it's the most classic thing. Then we lose to Bolton away, I think it was, which was that kind of well-known, the coldest game anyone's ever been to. So that was the top 6. That's top. Yeah. So the top 2 sort of gone. But beating Wolves was massive. I remember coming back and listening to like Paul Franks on the radio, and all the Villa fans are saying, "Are we going to get top 2?" And all the Wolves fans and stuff like running out of it. But yeah, really good really good result. Good night. It was a 5:30, I think. What could have been a bigger moment, but at the same time, again, it was just like the emotion of it to me. To win 4-1 against you. Say
it's a derby game, isn't it? Yeah. As much as they're not Blues,
yeah.
it's still Wolves, and we're third, they're top. We think maybe there's an outside chance of top 2, but definitely playoffs. This is a game where maybe we'll put something together and see what happens. Just go through the 11 quickly. Sam Johnston, El Mohammadi, Chester, John Terry. Again, when I was writing these down to do the graphics for it, it's like John Terry played for us. Like, obviously, I've not forgotten, but that's mad in itself. Neil Taylor, Jedinak, Harahan, Adoma, Snodgrass, Grealish, and Graben. If Tammy Abraham was in that side instead of Graben, we probably would have got promoted that year, which again is another potential sliding doors moment there. The one name that I didn't mention there, though, and we've not mentioned yet, Berkir Bjarnason, another throwback to the past. The Iceman cometh and jinks through the Wolves defence like Lionel Messi. But yeah, that's something that stands out from that game as well. Bjarnason's goal, just where did that come from?
I think he got a couple of goals for Villa. I think he scored a nice goal against Reading as well. I don't know why I'm thinking of that. That was another game that season. Reading.
With Bjarnason, wasn't he a left winger or playing left wing, and then he suddenly put in DM, and he was brilliant at DM, or was it the other way around?
So he was all I remember for Iceland and for Basel, he'd play off the wing, but then clearly he was just a versatile player who had a bit of an engine. He never, I don't know, I feel like he had something to bring, but ultimately didn't really show much. But he played midfield, didn't he? Like a game against Brentford when we had Lansbury, Horahan, and Bjarnason on deadline day when we signed Hogan, and Hogan was a Brentford player. We lost 3-0 to Brentford, and it was just like, what is the point?
Maybe that was an oversight, me just calling Bjarnason a brilliant DM, but it seemed like we played him out, you know what I mean? We played him out wide this whole time. We thought, oh yeah, he's all right, he can do a job. But he played in midfield, and it was something like, oh, all right, he's probably better in midfield. Maybe I'm the only one that thought like that.
I don't know.
That's know in the comments whether Bjarnason was better at DM.
I don't know. That game as well, we beat Wednesday 4-2, and then we beat Sunderland 3-0, and then we beat Wolves 4-1. So it was real like a proper momentum shift, and then we bugged lose to QPR. So
yeah, let's move on. Let's not think about how that season ended ultimately as well. To 6th in the list now. I mean, it wouldn't be a list of the times that Aston Villa shut on their opponents without mentioning 5-1 Birmingham City, April 2008, a date that for some reason always sticks in the mind as just knowing when this was. 2 from Ashley Young, 2 from John Carew, 1 from the Derby Day hero Gabby Bonlahor. Just again, one of my earliest memories of going to Villa Park, feeling like we'd win all the time. But that game, just unbelievable. The atmosphere so good. Again, a little bit of a nostalgia moment that it feels like the best kind of thing ever because it was 12, 13 years ago. But yeah, it just feels like next level, that the atmosphere on the day and how well we played. And it wouldn't be a list, would it, without us sticking Birmingham City in there somewhere.
I don't have much recollection of the game, I'll be honest, but that's again always like a moment, like Premier League years, you kind of wait for that game to come up. It was 5. I don't remember what their goal was, or I'm not sure, but yeah, I remember all of our goals in terms of just have to watch them on highlights and stuff. Was that the game that Carew took the mascot? And does that iconic?
I think so. I'm pretty sure that was against the ball boy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was against Blues, but I don't know whether it was that one. I think it must have been. Again, if it was, it'll have been on screen at this point. It was the game where Mel Burke's doing the iconic kind of double fist celebration when he got subbed off. So yeah, that was that game for sure. I don't know whether the Creon must have been.
He scored twice in that game. He scored twice. Ashley almost scored twice. Gabby obviously scored against Blues as well.
Yeah.
But it was just an iconic game for many reasons. I think Blues got relegated that year as well. An iconic win if we won that 3-1, but because it's 5-1, that's why we have to include it in our list.
Yeah, but not including it in top spot, which some might argue that should be the ultimate, the peak. You beat your fierce rivals 5-1 at home. All your forward players score. A couple of them scored twice. Your iconic captain, was he captain Melberg? It would have been at some point. He goes off with it to a standing ovation, giving it fist bumps to the crowd. Gareth Barry would have captained, of course. Yeah, Cruz was picking up ball boys if that was the game. Like, that should be top spot. That's perfect. But what takes top spot for us, and probably most people watching this, and if you disagree, let us know in the comments down below. Aston Villa 7, Liverpool 2. And this game is very much different to the game we've just talked about with Blues, and kind of this fuzzy nostalgia, nice feeling about it. I kind of feel the same way towards Liverpool, but with this kind of tinge of sadness that we only watched it on TV. And all the photos of it, the stadium is empty. And that's the thing that disappoints me a little bit. Again, it doesn't matter. We won 7-2 against the reigning champions. It was unbelievable. But imagine how much better it would have been if we were all there.
I just tell myself that it wouldn't have happened if we were there.
True.
I don't know whether it's a nervous energy or whatever it is. I just don't think it would happen. Like not all of those games, but a lot of those games, like losing 4-3 to Southampton, beating Palace with 10 men easily. Other games as well. We beat Chelsea at the end of the season. We beat Tottenham away. Like there was just a lot of weird games. Like losing 3-0 at home to Leeds. There's strange results for the whole season. United lost a couple of hours before us. Now like 6-1 to Spurs, I think. We saved United's blushes in a way because all the papers the next morning are obviously like, well, actually, that wasn't even the biggest shock. I still can't get over it, really. It doesn't make any sort of logical sense because that Liverpool team was arguably one of, or, I know Liverpool have had some very good teams over the years, very good teams, but that's the team that won them the Premier League trophy. The only difference was that they had Adrian in goal instead of Alisson, but I don't think Adrian was at fault for all. I mean, he was at fault for one of the goals, obviously, I think the first one. But apart from that, I don't think there's anything he could do about the other ones. If Alisson was in goal, they were one-on-ones anyway. So, yeah, it was just one of those freak games. Like, the goals we scored, obviously, McGinn's was a deflection to make it 4-1. Barkley, on his debut, was a deflection as well. Probably another deflection somewhere. It was similar to when United lost on Sunday against Liverpool, 7-0. Like, was it a 7-0? Possibly not, but Liverpool had like 7 or 8 shots on target and they all went in. So, kind of a freak in that way. Like, we can't deny that. But at the same time, you've scored 7 goals to beat, or 7-2. You scored 7 goals to beat Liverpool. And like, not to dig into Blues, but I feel like we could beat Blues 5-1 again, or we win the championship, and it won't be the last time probably because whether it's Blues or Bolton or Blackburn, there's every chance we'll beat a team that's not as good as us by a lot of goals. But Liverpool will always be one of the top clubs in the country, so we'll probably never beat them. Or score that amount of goals and beat them. So it has to be top. Say like full strength team apart from the keeper. They had Van Dijk there, and that was the team that won the Premier League only a couple of months before. I know that wasn't their best season. They still finished like 3rd or 2nd though that year. So yeah, just mad. Everything worked. 4-1 at half time, but I still wasn't comfortable.
They'll come out in the second half and score 3 and we'll lose 5-4.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, because they were only 3 goals behind. Like I say, only. Yeah. And in the end, we did it. But yeah, my only memory from that, obviously wasn't in the stadium, was I was at uni again and I had my room in the basement. Anytime Villa scored a goal, I would just like nowhere to really move. So you kind of got to use up your energy somehow. So I had like my stairs to go up into like the first level. So anytime Villa would score in that game or in any other game, I just run up the stairs and run back down, like shouting. So it was like a workout after that game. It's like running up the stairs, like 14 times, I suppose. Yeah, mental, just bizarre. I remember just sitting down afterwards, like, what?
Yeah, the podcast that we did afterwards, which I'll put a clip in of us just starting it. I think I opened a beer early on, just going.
Got a can of Pepsi Max here. Let's enjoy it. It's a full fat, full sugar performance, so drink it in.
Straight in the Premier League glass, because we are not leaving this league, let me tell you.
Yeah, there's absolutely no explanation at all. Like that, you could just go over any player and be like, yeah, it was this, that. Like Grealish arguably had one of the best performances in Premier League history, not just for him or for Villa. I mean, like as a player ever. Like the Premier League, like, it was insane. He got like 5 assists and just ran the whole mental. Watkins perfect hat trick in the first half.
Also, Ollie Watkins' first goals for us, which I didn't realise. I was looking into this the other day. Because obviously it's Ollie Watkins' 100th Premier League game coming up soon. In the Premier League, yeah, of course. Because he scored in the Cup, didn't he? I think in the Cup before that. That was his debut goal for us. He's coming up to his 100th game, so I was just looking through like the landmarks on a first goal, 10th goal, 20th goal, first brace, first hat-trick, that kind of thing. Obviously knowing the hat-trick was Liverpool. But obviously we only signed him in the summer of that season, and this was like the 3rd or 4th Premier League game of the season. So yeah, Ollie Watkins' first Aston Villa goal was the first goal of a perfect hat-trick against the reigning champions in a 7-2 win. Well, that's a mad thing in itself, because I just thought, well, if that was his hat-trick, he's obviously scored a couple of goals in the season already before that, but that was like the start of the season, that Liverpool game, like I said, the 3rd or 4th game.
Yes.
I'll just read the team news out quickly. Most of us will be familiar with it. Martinez, Cash, Conce, Mings, Target, Douglas Luiz, McGinn, Barkley, Trezeguet, Grealish, Watkins. Little stat from the website that I'm using, 11v11.com. This was the second time Aston Villa had scored 7 or more goals in a game in the Premier League. Also 7-1 versus Wimbledon on the 11th of February 1995. We've put Liverpool in because I think that won't be matched just because of the level of opposition. Like you said, if we played the reigning champions again at the start of a new season, will we ever win 7-2 again? Probably not. So that kind of out trumps every other game that we could put into this list, and people will say in the comments this cup win was better or this win from whatever year was better. But for our list that we're doing, Aston Villa 7, Liverpool 2 has to top it just because of the magnitude of the opposition.
Yeah, like we can. There's more important wins in Aston Villa's history. Like you can probably round 25, 30 of them, and we've got a proud history of winning things like this. But yeah, in terms of what the hell and goals and just shock, and again, will it happen again? Probably not, or not for a long time. Liverpool has to be there, not just because it's Liverpool, but you say the Premier League champions with that too. So yeah, that would be like us beating Man City 7-2 at the start of this season. Like it's just bananas. It makes no sense. And yeah, I can't still piece it together. And so I think a lot of it was kind of everything went right for Villa on the day. But at the same time, there's absolutely no taking anything away because like it's insane. I've got a screenshot on my phone of when I FaceTimed my dad and like my brother and my mum afterwards, and it was like 48 minutes on top. I'll try and find it. Yeah, it was just to prove like what the hell. Like we need to talk about this. This is bizarre. I don't think that will be topped, and that will kind of live with me forever. Probably. It's just mental.
Yeah, I like that this podcast was based off the fact that Liverpool just won 7-0 against Man United, and it made me think, let's do a podcast about times when Villa have battered people, and then we've ended it with us scoring 7 past them as well, which is a nice kind of ending to it. Yeah. We'll just go through some honourable mentions from social media. Some of these will be repeated, so bear with me if we go over any of the same. Pricey said Liverpool 7-2, Villa 6-1 Sunderland, Derby 6-0, Villa 7-1 Wimbledon, Villa 5-1 Blues, and Leicester 0, Villa 5. They're in the Premier League. They're only ones that come to mind in my lifetime, he says. AVFC Stato came out with the biggest Premier League wins. So 1994, a 5-0 win over Swindon, the 7-1 against Wimbledon that I've just mentioned, a 5-0 win over Wimbledon in 96, that Derby 6-0, Villa, Sunderland 6-1, and obviously Villa 7-2 Liverpool. So with 3 of those mentioned are the ones that we've talked about already. Mark McIntosh has great memories of the 6-2 win against Everton at Villa Park in 1989. Litch says, my first thought was December 1976 and beating Liverpool 5-1. There's 2 here that were kind of on my honourable mentions list. Now, one that I didn't see, but I know about. To be fair, 2, both cup finals from the 90s. 3-1 against Man United and the 3-0 against Leeds in 94 and 96 as going on a cup final and kind of blowing the opposition away and winning the trophy. Like, that's got to be up there as a level of achievement. Kind of a semi-rogue one because it's not a huge scoreline, but the 2-1 win over Liverpool at Wembley in the semi-final with the FA Cup, one of Grealish's first games for us under Tim Sherwood. Grealish, Delph, Benteke linking up and kind of playing Liverpool off the park at Wembley. Again, doesn't have this flashy scoreline of a 5-0 or a 7-2, but one that I think of as a kind of performance that obviously gets us to a final that we go on to lose. So that kind of dampens it a little bit. But as a dominant performance in part of that game, yeah, an honourable mention for that. A couple of mentions for the Aston Villa 6, Everton 2 from back in the late 80s. A couple of people said Rotterdam, which again, it's only a 1-0, but the magnitude of
like
the European Cup.
Obviously that trumps anything. Well, that whole run in our European Cup triumph, was it 5 or 6 games that obviously we had 2 legs there, didn't we? So.
Final one from Rich, who says Villa 2, Inter Milan 0 back in 1990. Shame we lost 3-0 away. Which, it's always something, isn't there, with Villa to bring you back down to reality after a good result. But what I like about this is all my tweets said Man United's embarrassing defeat to Liverpool has got me thinking what are Aston Villa's best ever performances. And a lot of them mentioned the 7-2, the 5-1 against Blues. A few mentioned the 6-1 Sunderland. So I like that even with the kind of great expanse of knowledge across Twitter of different age groups, they've still got 3 or 4 of the same that we've put in this list as well.
The win over, I know again, we're kind of just naming wins now, but the win over Inter, we need to probably let's do one in terms of magnitude as well as a podcast, because like you can name like the Derby one, for example. Obviously, we know it's big, but then another sort of butterfly moment. If we lost to Derby, we wouldn't have Grealish. Would we have gone up the next year? We wouldn't have parachute payments. Obviously, we have with the owners that we have, but we know the Championship's a slog and everyone wanted to beat Villa. So I feel like if we didn't go up that year, it would have been so as well. Like I was bored. It sounds quite snobby, but I was bored of Championship football at that point. Like really was sick of it.
Also, sorry, come in. with all the excitement that we're talking about Aston Villa 7, Liverpool 2, my newborn son has wet himself. I've just been handed him to hold for a second. What do you think about some of these games we've been talking about? He still hasn't got over the Liverpool 7-2 yet. Actually, funny story, just as we're talking about different random things. Me and my partner, who have been together a couple of years now, yeah, I know. When we first started speaking and kind of getting to know each other, it was like early October, and the Liverpool game was the 4th of October. She worked at a pub at the time in like a part-time job after COVID, and she messaged me because the Liverpool game was on. We were obviously winning 7-2. Yeah. And she said, like, oh, yeah, Villa are doing really well. Like, yeah, trying just to have small talk or whatever. And I was like, I was like, I know. I was like, it's not always like that. Trust me, we don't always beat the reigning champions 7-2. Don't get used to it. We talk about like magnitude of wins and things like that. I think there's an episode in like the 10 butterfly effect moments at Aston Villa, and we'll have to do some research for that as well. So maybe if comments want to put some suggestions down below, like little moments in history where if things were slightly different, we'd have gone on these various paths of either winning a trophy or being relegated or signing this player or selling that player. I think there's some interesting discussion there. And again, it's just memory lane stuff. I like talking about players that you just go, oh, Yakuba Silla, Christ, yeah, you played this. John McCoo, remember when we signed him and he was in that crap jumper? Like all these random little talking points to that podcast. Like, this is what I want to do more of. But we will call it a day there, as I've obviously got to go do other things with the baby. Thanks for everyone who's watched along. There's going to be plenty of suggestions of loads of different games and different results that you think are the biggest times that Aston Villa have blown their opponent away or ripped them to shreds or whatever the title of this video has eventually been. So get involved, put those in the comments, and we'll chat down there as well. John, thanks for your time as always. We'll be back on Friday with a West Ham preview, and then Sunday for a post-match show. And then again, same time next week on Tuesday, we'll do something else. I don't know what it'll be. That's the beauty of these kind of midweek episodes. Maybe a Q&A, maybe a phone-in, maybe the 6 times this random thing happened, and we'll just go down memory lane and see what happens. So thanks everyone for tuning in as always, and we'll see you again on Friday. Thank you for listening to Claret and Blue and Aston Villa podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please do let us know. We love hearing your thoughts and comments. We'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, up the Villa.